Hey, welcome back. I know this ship's already been covered by most of the other content creators. I'm a little bit slower. That's pretty normal for me. I missed a couple of days during the event and also had to do some testing on things to really get into the nitty-gritty details here. So that's what I'm going to kind of show in this video. I'm also going to talk about the 14th anniversary bundle and my thoughts on that, and a couple other bits and pieces at the end, so stick around for that. First off, I really like the way this ship looks. I think it's very cool. It's clearly, Jem'Hadar attack ship style is that kind of the primary influence. You've got these little side nacelles and the kind of saucer section on the back, but underneath that, it still kind of has that bug ship sort of aesthetic where you have this sort of belly thing underneath. But the nacelles are a little bit longer. Obviously, you've got that Alliance color scheme, the kind of like white, yellow, gray, and blue thing. And I really, really like the way this ship looks. It's very cool. So, and the front of it's kind of Defiant-esque almost. Maybe the nacelles too. Overall, just really, really pleasing design. I think visually this is one of the cooler looking ships available. And you also get the wingmen that have the same ship model. I thought the wingmen might be the standard Jem'Hadar style wingmen, but they have the same model as the player ship actually, even the same size. If I go top down like that, you can kind of see. And they do get a little cluttered sometimes if there's a lot going on screen because they're not different from your ship, but that's really a minor complaint. I think that this looks really, really cool. And the other thing I want to mention is that this is not a completed build. This isn't a build video by any means. I'm going to talk about some stuff that comes on the ship and how maybe I would build it, but do not think that you should copy the current layout or whatever that you see in this video for your Rex. This is purely for the purpose of demonstration and testing, which is why I'm in this PvP map, and I've got my my other test ship is hiding just around the corner over here so that I can test various effects on it, which is something that I do a lot of. So we'll get into that in just a moment. The interesting thing about this ship is that you've got a pilot and miracle worker combination on a relatively quick little ship. Makes it kind of similar to the like the Freedom Frigate or the Courier Pilot Raider. This one, the hull capacity is a 1.1. Yeah, so 1.1, so you're a little bit lower than the Freedom, which has a 1.3, but more than the Courier, which has, I think, a 0.9 or 1.0 or something like that. So kind of middle survivability. Not that the hull capacity really has that big of effect on survivability anyway, but it's not full spec. So if we go to the bridge officer stations, and this is the most important part of any build is how this configuration is. You have a lieutenant commander pilot and a lieutenant miracle worker. So it's not full pilot spec, which means you can't use the commander level pilot abilities. That's like reroute reserves to weapons 3, fly her apart 3, clean getaway 3, and a couple of other options in that range. But that's not a huge deal. It just means that so you're not going to do a reroute reserves build on this, basically. But it does have pilot maneuvers, so that's kind of unique to these event ships, is that even though it's not a full spec ship and you can't use the top level ability, you do still get pilot maneuver, so you can still do those cool little rolls that give you some damage immunity at critical moments if you need to dodge an attack or whatever. And it also makes it really, really fun to fly around because you can, sort of zip around. You can also burst forward, get a little extra speed that way, and very, very fun maneuverable ship to fly. So I'm very pleased with the actual mechanical nature of the ship itself. Back to that Boff layout though. You have a full commander tactical seat. So if I were doing PvE, I probably would do like maybe cannons with scatter volley 3 or fire at will 3. You could even do a beam overload build on this, no problem at all. So that's really nice. This other seat with the miracle worker, it's also tactical, so there's almost too much tactical seating, really, but because you have the miracle worker lieutenant here, you could put narrow sensor bands or mixed armament synergy in those slots for some extra spike damage. Or if you're running like torpedoes, then you could put your torp spread or whatever, kind of like I have it set up here. But again, this isn't a real setup. Then you have a lieutenant commander, engineer, and pilot, and then this lieutenant commander universal, so you could put anything there, science or engineer. Right now I have science because I was testing some unconventional systems stuff. And then the last seat down here is an ensign science. Okay, the other cool thing about this is it comes with these wingmen, which other ships, the Jem'Hadar ships, come with these, but this is the first time that we've ever gotten them for free. And if you're watching this video, you know, far in the future, maybe the ship's in a MUDs bundle or something. But I am not sure that it would be worth buying if that's the case. So it's really just a nice plus for those of us that were here in time to do the event. But basically, these wingmen have these various modes. So you have the divergent shielding maneuver, which lowers the shield resistance and drains some shields against a target that you have targeted. That's not very effective or very good at all, so that's basically worthless. But then you have the polaron strafing maneuver, which basically does like it teleports them to the enemy location and they fire. It says polaron and deals polaron damage, but that's actually wrong. It deals anti-proton damage on this particular ship. I guess they just didn't change the text on the tooltip, but it is anti-proton damage. It's not a ton of damage, but it's something. But the real highlight to these pets is the structural reinforcement maneuver. So you can link both together so that when you click on this, they both activate. And this one, basically, they teleport to you, and then they heal you and also give you 25% shield resistance for 15 seconds. So for 15 seconds, you get 2500 HP as well as 25% shield resistance, and this does stack. So 2 of these on you is 50% shield resistance, and if you check, the cooldown is every 20 seconds. So 75% uptime on 50% shield resistance and a fairly large heal over time is very, very effective. And because you can use this anywhere, you could fly really far away from your wingmen, if I can outmaneuver them. If I hit this, they teleport right to me and immediately start healing me. That can be a very useful survivability measure. So kind of a nice way to keep yourself alive is just to drag these maneuvers and uncouple them onto your spam bar. And then as you're running through your tray, you're also getting healed. See, like that. The ship also comes with this console, the Elite Alliance Squadron beacon. Basically, it spawns in 4 ships. You've got a Jem'Hadar attack ship, a bird of prey, a Romulan Melem warbird, like a Tavaro type, and then it says Defiant Escort, but it's actually a Saber class. And these don't benefit from like superior area denial or coordinated assault or any of those hangar traits because they're not technically hangar pets, and neither are the wingmen. But they do benefit from stuff like the fleet weapon acceleration from the flagship set, which now you can use on any ship. So you just hit that and you can see the buff on all of them right there. They all get that haste buff. As well as the turn rate and flight speed buff. Fleet Maneuver Gamma, which I don't have equipped right now, but that's another one you can equip. It gives everything bonus damage, accuracy, and defense. That works on your wingmen and pets summoned by this console. And the pets that are summoned by this last 45 seconds. So if you have a couple of unconventional systems procs, you can actually keep the pets out basically 100% of the time. And you can also use this console on any ship, so you could put it on your favorite carrier or whatever. And have basically an extra 4 what are effectively frigate pets in a way. And they don't have the strongest abilities. If I look at the little thing here, high yield, attack pattern omega, scatter volley, eng team, scatter volley alpha, rapid fire beta. So it's like, it's not super, super powerful. It's not as powerful as an actual like elite hangar pet frigate, but for one console slot, and you can just spam it indefinitely and keep them out on the field. If you're into that kind of gameplay style, carriers or whatever, it's a really good console to have. And the passives on the console actually aren't that bad either. 8% crit severity is pretty decent. 10% flight speed, really not that noticeable, but could be much worse, definitely. And the next really important thing that I want to talk about is the trait. And I'm actually going to talk about the trait over on my other account that I'm going to test with. Alright, so I'm on a Hydra here, and I've made some minor adjustments to my abilities just to demonstrate this. But the trait from the Alliance ship here is called Inertial Supremacy. So Inertial Supremacy, if you look at it, it says weapon attacks during AoE fire modes apply a 30 damage resistance rating in this case, but the amount of damage resistance applied scales with your speed, and it has nothing to do with how fast you're actually moving or what your throttle setting is set to. So let me bring that trait up again. Right now it's at 30.6. If I accelerate, it actually went down a little bit, 28.9. Probably because I'm turning a little bit here, so my maximum speed's low. But it doesn't matter, even if I'm at quarter throttle. See, I'm still at negative 28.9 for the debuff. It's based on your maximum possible speed. So, for example, if I hit... I'm going to slow down. I'm not moving at all, right? If I hit emergency power to engines, it will increase 38.5 now, because my maximum possible speed is higher. If I hit aux to SIF, which is going to trigger my competitive engines, 50. And it's because during the 5 seconds of my competitive engines, I can possibly hit 240 speed. So another one is like Clean Getaway, I think also does it. Yeah, negative 50 right there. So if you're flying a ship that can go fast, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be moving fast in order to get the maximum benefit from this trait. You could be stopped or moving at quarter throttle and, you know, maneuvering around a combat area. As long as the ship can possibly go a certain amount of speed, 240 in this case, you'll get the maximum debuff from this. And there's a couple of funny things about this trait, and that's kind of why I have this set up right now. So if I target my opposing ship here, a common thing that we do in PvP a lot, but also in PvE, is superior area denial applies a debuff. So does this trait. So if I hit cannon scatter volley, then beam overload, and I fire a beam overload shot, you'll see right there, inertial supremacy, it applied the debuff to my enemy, the enemy ship right there. So you don't actually have to have the AoE fire mode, like your weapons don't have to be firing using the AoE fire mode. As long as any AoE fire mode, as described in the trait, in this case, fire at will, scatter volley, or torpedo spread. So as long as those are active and on your buff bar, any weapon attacks you do to the target will apply the inertial supremacy damage resistance debuff. What that also means is, for example, surgical strikes cannot be used with superior area denial, because if I hit cannon scatter volley, it blocks me from using surgical strikes. So that's why people aren't using superior area denial on surgical strikes builds, because you can't run both of them at the same time. Makes sense. However, torpedo spread does not have the same lockout with surgical strikes because it applies to different weapons. Torpedoes, projectile weapons, and surgical strikes is only for energy weapons. So if I hit torpedo spread and now it's on my bar for 30 seconds, and then I hit surgical strikes and I fly over and I shoot the target, you'll see that inertial supremacy is being applied. I do wish I could turn those wingmen off for the testing, but yeah, basically, if you have torpedo spread on your build and you're using surgical strikes, you can apply the debuff now from inertial supremacy. Now, the big negative is, if you have a torpedo actually equipped and that torpedo fires, then you lose the torpedo spread buff. So I don't think I have a torpedo, actually. Oh, I do. Okay. So just for a quick example, if I do a torpedo spread and then I fire it, so now that buff is gone. If I hit surgical strikes and then fire, the debuff did not apply. So that's kind of your, you know, situational how you could run that is you could sacrifice a Boff ability slot like I've done here, where I crammed Torp Spread 1 into the bottom, but I'm running all energy weapons. And then I can benefit from using this trait on a build that normally wouldn't be able to, like Surgical Strikes, or Reroute Reserve to Weapons, or Exceed Rated Limits, which isn't really notable right now, but who knows, maybe a year in the future, Miracle Worker might get revamped and maybe Exceed Rated Limits would be really powerful combined with this trait. So, you know, just giving you options. Right, so another thing I want to mention just for the PvP side of it is if I fire this, there we go. All right, back to the ship that took the damage. If I look here on my buff bar, I have Inertial Supremacy debuff for 25 seconds. This is not cleared by hazard emitters, engineering team, or science team, but it is cleared by tactical team. So technically, there is a debuff cleanse for that. It's tactical team. You also can clear it with the Doff that we all use, the Warp Core Engineer, when you use an emergency power ability. So I don't anticipate that being a major problem in combat. Seems pretty well balanced to me. You get debuffed, but you can clear it. How intensely you want to clear it depends on whether you're willing to run tactical team or if you want to risk just running the duty officer, and I appreciate that, whether by accident or not. But as we've seen with some other abilities lately, like Malicious AI, it seems like they kind of forget about the fact that you should be able to clear a debuff off of yourself. Now, speaking of odd behaviors about this trait, I mentioned before that the amount of debuff depends on your maximum possible speed, and you can reapply this debuff. So it lasts 30 seconds, obviously, which is great. And against NPC enemies, like in PvE, it's going to last the whole 30 seconds. So say, you know, you're fighting a Borg cube or whatever. Right now, the debuff that I'm applying is only -30. So let me go back to my other thing and bring up the stat screen. All right, so passively, I'm sitting about 44%. I'm just looking at anti-proton resist, just to make it easy. 44.8%. Okay, so let me get in range. I'll fire my weapon. And now if I go back over here, I'm at 28%. So I'm being debuffed from 44% to 28% with that. And even if I hit engines and Oxysip or whatever and speed up and fire, it will refresh the duration of the buff. There we go. So even though my debuff should have been, it was at 42 there for a second, if I go back over here, it's still at 28.1, even though it's been refreshed. And that is because once the debuff is applied, the amount of debuff that is applied stays the same as long as it doesn't get cleared, and no NPC will clear it. So in that situation, and this is going to definitely be one of those finer points to piloting or something that organized teams are going to have to leverage. But if I hit, say, Ox to Sif, engines, and clean getaway, now my maximum debuff is 50, and I fire on that target. Let me just get out of range again for the pets. Okay. I'm down to 17.8%. Another over 10% debuff against me. And for those of you who don't know, NPC enemies do not have resistances. No enemy in the game has resistances. It's actually one of the biggest pain points that I like to bring up when I talk about PvE combat, is that it's kind of boring, right? That like Borg resist damage the same amount that Kazon do. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. I think it would be cool if Borg were like more resistant to, say, phaser, disruptor, but then less resistant to anti-proton or something like that. You know, that would make sense canonically. But anyway, my point is that you want to apply the debuff from Inertial Supremacy while moving. I mean, you don't have to be moving. Your maximum ship speed has to be showing the highest level debuff on this bar. So clean getaway or Oxysif or whatever. Basically, I think in practice, you're going to want to try to apply the debuff during your competitive engine speed burst. Because if you don't, then you're stuck with whatever lower amount it applies at. In my case, the difference between -50 and -30 is a pretty big difference. So something to keep in mind there. And another important thing about this trait is that it does not stack. So right now, this ship, since the Rex just came out, everybody's flying it around just like any event ship. I go to Deep Space Nine or Sol or whatever, and there's tons of them because lots of people are flying it right now. It just came out. And that makes sense. And people are going to use this trait for a while, and it doesn't stack. So really only one person needs to be running it in a run. Like, ideally, the tank or support build would be running it with Fire at Will, because then it spreads the debuff to all the targets being hit. And over time, though, as the Rex gets older and people start playing the game that missed this event and use of that trait falls off, it's going to kind of come back into its own as far as effectiveness. Kind of like Cold-Hearted. Like, for a while, everybody had Cold-Hearted, and it was like, stop running Cold-Hearted because it doesn't stack any additional times if you're on a team. And then now it's at the point where you're asking people, do you have Cold-Hearted? Somebody needs to bring Cold-Hearted. We need at least one Cold-Hearted. It's because people that missed that event don't have it. So I expect to see the same thing happen with this trait as well. But either way, it's a really, really good trait, and I would definitely recommend using it quite a bit, especially if you're into the support or elite TFO side of the game. All right, a couple of things I forgot to mention before I warped out there. First, the Rex, which I'm no longer in because I already switched ships, but it is not a full pilot ship like I said before, but the Eagle console, the Covert Warhead module, that lowers the shared torpedo recharge. So that's essentially the amount of time in between firing torpedoes. Normally it's 2 seconds. Most ships it's 1.5 seconds, but on a full ship with pilot maneuvers, including the Rex because it has pilot maneuvers, equipping this console allows you to fire a torpedo every half second. And it's actually shorter than half second. If you look at the independent testing over on like STO builds, it's I think 0.26 seconds or 0.30 seconds, somewhere around there. So you could do some pretty interesting torpedo shenanigans with the Rex, but the biggest drawback is that the Rex does not have concentrate firepower, so it would be a strictly off-meta kind of for fun build, or maybe if you had some nannies with you that were providing concentrate firepower for you, but you didn't have a copy of your own. Either way, kind of cool, maybe useful info for someone out there, but cool nonetheless. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I know PvP is sort of a niche thing, but this channel is always going to take that into account because I really enjoy PvP, and that's where I spend most of my time in the game, frankly. But not lately because the Malicious AI Boff ability is still broken. But I just wanted to mention something because I recently got a Gorn Raider, and I was going to do a plasma build, just for fun or whatever. Malicious AI, if you look at the tooltip, it applies either an engine's offline for battleships or larger, or a hold for any other type of ship. And that's what's broken about it, is the hold effect will hold a player ship for the full 15 seconds indefinitely, and you can just spam this over and over again. That's very, very broken. We all know that. I did another whole video about that. But the thing that I think is interesting is if you look at the Plasma Incendiary Bombard experimental weapon. This experimental weapon deals plasma damage, and it increases the amount of plasma damage that it deals based on whether the target is a cruiser or a battleship or a dreadnought. So if you shoot a dreadnought with this, you get the base damage plus 3 extra instances of additional damage. So you'd think, wow, like maybe that's pretty powerful against players. And I thought maybe I'd give it a try. Why not? This weapon does 0 damage to players. It's coded in a way that does not deal any damage to player ships. And there's a couple of other things in the game that work like this too, like Thalaron Pulse from the Scimitar. But just to demonstrate that, if I fire it, see how it hit, but the shots just went by. And if I look at the damage, we look at the combat log here. Let me fire it one more time. Yeah, it doesn't even show up. But there's a weapon. Regular weapon attack. Fire it again. Nothing. So essentially the Plasma Incendiary Bombardment was coded to be because 28,000 plasma damage, especially buffed and with crit damage times 4 or damage times 4 or whatever I have it, that could be a pretty enormous amount of damage in PvP. It could probably one-shot people in PvP. So it's odd that they had the foresight to make it behave differently against players by essentially doing nothing to them. I would have rather it dealt like half damage or something against players, something like that. But still, I'd rather have it do nothing than be broken. And it's just interesting to see the contrast between two different designs, I guess. So the point is, malicious AI still needs a fix. Because you've got basically a whole community of players, my community of players, sitting on their hands not playing the game right now because you can't play PvP with it. Because this ability is just so broken, and you can't really trust people not to use it or a random person not to use it. You could have never played PvP in your life, and if you come into a PvP map with 3 copies of this ability and just spam it, you're gonna kill people, and it's stupid that it works like that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and have a good one. Bye.